He was the hero who could do no wrong. Until suddenly he could. This is the story of a fall from grace so stunning. It divided the football world, the tale of a player who was both a phenomenon and a flop. To truly understand the journey of Fernando Torres, make sure you're subscribed and let's begin. Some players are born with gifts so profound, so utterly breathtaking, that the world simply falls at their feet, mesmerized by their skill. But what happens when those gifts seem to vanish? What happens when the magic fades? Rarely does a player experience both the absolute pinnacle of adoration and the harshest depths of criticism. Fans, it seems, struggle to accept that someone so blessed with talent isn't superhuman after all. Today we delve into the career of one of the most exceptional, most polarizing players to ever grace the pitch. Depending on which chapter of his life you recall, you might see him as a failure or one of the greatest of his generation. This is the story of Fernando Torres. Born in 1984, the third child in his family, Fernando's destiny was unknowingly set in motion by his older brother, a devoted football lover. The beautiful game found its way into Fernando's life when, at the tender age of 2, he stumbled upon a ball his brother had left lying around the house. Instinct took over. He started kicking it, a simple, pure act that his family found endearing. They saw a spark, a natural joy, and they nurtured it, encouraging him to play, to learn to feel the ball at his feet. By the age of 4, during a family holiday in A Coruña, that spark had ignited into a burning obsession. The young Fernando was relentless, constantly begging his father to play with him, to teach him more, to share the secrets of the sport. The salty sea air seemed to fuel his passion. When they returned from that vacation, the requests began. He wanted to join a team. He needed to join a team. His family, seeing this was more than a passing phase, fulfilled his wish, enrolling him in a local futsal squad, Parque Ochenta. It was on the hard, fast surface of the futsal court that the foundations of the future superstar were laid. In the tight spaces and quick exchanges, he developed a fierce sense of competitiveness, a hunger that grew with every game. The dream was no longer a vague fantasy. It was starting to take shape, to feel real. And then something happened that many of us can relate to. Torres himself has said that his dream of becoming a footballer was supercharged by a television show, the legendary anime Captain Tsubasa, known in Spain as Oliver Y. Benji. The on-screen drama, the impossible shots, the sheer passion of the characters, it captivated him. After every episode, he would grab his brother and drag him outside, desperate to recreate the magic he'd just witnessed. But here's a twist you might not expect. Back then, he wanted to be a goalkeeper. He loved the idea of being the last line of defense, the hero between the sticks. That career path, however, came to an abrupt and painful end. One day, a powerfully struck ball caught him square in the face, breaking a few of his teeth. From that moment on, his time as a keeper was over. His mother understandably suggested he try playing a little further up the pitch. Once he began to develop his skills as an outfield player, it was as if a force of nature had been unleashed. Nothing could stop him. The people around him, his coaches, the parents on the sidelines, they all started to realize that this kid wasn't just good. He was something else entirely. His talent was so undeniable that he earned a spot on a futsal team in a tournament organized by a local coffee shop, despite being 3 years younger than the age limit. You might think I'm lingering too long on these childhood details, but to truly grasp what made Fernando Torres the player he became, you have to understand this period of his life. He was a prodigy in every sense of the word. At age 10, after his family moved and he joined his first 11-a-side team, he exploded onto the scene, becoming a name whispered among scouts across the region. In his very first season, he scored an astonishing 55 goals in the youth league. That incredible feat earned him the one thing he'd been dreaming of: a trial at Atletico de Madrid. For any young boy with a football dream, a trial with a major club is like hitting the jackpot. But for Torres, this was something more. It was personal. It was legacy. You see, his grandfather was a colchonero through and through, a die-hard Atletico fan who never tired of telling young Fernando what the club meant, the history, the passion, the identity of being Atleti. By the age of 12, Fernando lived and breathed for the club. He understood the soul of the rojiblancos. So when the opportunity came, there was no way he was going to let it slip by. He stepped onto that pitch for his trial with a fire in his eyes, impressing everyone who watched him and securing his spot in the academy. Once he was in, a new challenge emerged: transportation. But his family's belief in him was absolute. Everyone pitched in, making sacrifices to ensure he could chase his dream. His father would leave work early to drive him. His mother, rain or shine, would take him to the train station. Even his siblings became part of the ritual, accompanying him to every training session, sitting in the stands doing their homework, while their brother carved out his path to greatness. It was during this time that his iconic nickname, El Niño, was born. Torres was naturally shy, and upon his arrival at the academy, he barely spoke to anyone. He was just the quiet new kid. But then he started to play. And when he played, words weren't necessary. The other players and coaches would watch in awe. Not knowing his name, they simply started referring to him as El Niño, the kid. His prodigious talent at such a young age meant the name stuck, following him throughout his career and becoming one of the most famous nicknames in modern football. By 1998, at the age of 14, Torres took a major step onto the European stage, participating in the Nike Cup, a precursor to the youth tournaments we see today. He found himself facing the youth teams of legendary clubs Manchester United, AC Milan, Juventus. It was a daunting prospect. Yet against all odds, Atletico de Madrid not only won the tournament, but Torres was named the best youth player in Europe. The continent was now on notice. The following year, at just 15 years old, he signed his first professional contract with Atletico de Madrid and earned his first cap for the Spanish U15 national team. His ascent was meteoric. But while these blessings were raining down on him, the Atletico first team was living through a nightmare. In a season where they were competing in the UEFA Cup, they somehow managed to finish second to last in La Liga and were relegated. It was a disaster. Key players like Jimmy Floyd, Hasselbank, and Valeron left the club. In need of a hero, a striker who could lead them back to the top flight, the club turned its attention to the academy. All eyes were on Torres. His professional debut seemed inevitable. But destiny, it seems, had other plans. Just when everything was going so perfectly, disaster struck. Torres cracked his shin bone. He was out until December. His dream was put on hold, and Atletico had to look elsewhere, delaying his debut once more. He had a World Cup medal. But had he lost something more important along the way? That explosive confidence, that physical edge. What do you think goes through a player's mind in a moment like that? Standing on top of the world, yet feeling like a shadow of your former self. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The following year, Torres was desperate to take part in the U16 Euros for Spain. But his long injury layoff meant he hadn't played in the qualifying rounds, and his spot in the squad was at risk. He was given one last shot to prove his worth in a friendly tournament. He didn't just take the opportunity. He seized it, playing with a point to prove and leading the team to victory once again, earning the trust and respect of his coaches. At the Euros, Torres was simply impeccable. He was on a different level. He scored 3 goals in the 3 group stage matches. In the quarter-finals against Italy, he scored Spain's only goal, in a match they would go on to win on penalties. In the semi-finals against Croatia, he scored 2 of Spain's 3 goals to send them to the final. By now, everyone in the footballing world was watching this incredible young man. The pressure was immense. Would he falter on the biggest stage? Of course not. In the final against France, the match was a tense, drawn-out affair. Then, in the 76th minute, a penalty was awarded to Spain. The weight of a nation's hopes rested on the shoulders of a 16-year-old. Torres stepped up to the spot cool as you like and converted the penalty, making his team U16 European champions. He didn't just lift the trophy. He also claimed the top scorer award and was named the best player of the tournament. When he returned to Spain, people were stopping him on the streets, asking for his autograph. He had done it. At the age of 17, Fernando Torres was a cult hero in Spanish football. And then the call came. It was from none other than Atletico Madrid legend Paulo Futre. He set up a meeting with Torres, looked him dead in the eye, and told him he wanted him in the first team. As the legend goes, his final words to the young prodigy were, "Look me in the eye. You are going to be the greatest." That meeting happened on a Tuesday. On Wednesday, Torres trained with the first team. On Saturday, he was in the matchday squad. And on Sunday, he made his professional debut. It was an incredible comeback, a testament to his resilience after the injury that had so cruelly delayed his season. Over the remainder of that season, Torres experienced the dizzying highs and crushing lows of football. He was over the moon when he scored his first goal at the iconic Vicente Calderón Stadium, the roar of the crowd a sound he'd dreamed of. But as the season concluded, heartbreak was waiting. Atletico finished level on points with Tenerife for the final promotion spot. They would miss out on a return to La Liga on goal difference. Torres was devastated, the dream of playing in the top flight snatched away at the last second. But he was still only 17. He knew he had time on his side. The following season, however, felt like a step backward. The U17 World Cup was a disaster. A shock defeat to Burkina Faso saw Spain crash out in the group stage. At club level, his performances didn't light up the second division as many had hoped. He scored only 6 goals in 36 matches, and for the first time, his place in the team was being questioned. Still, one thing kept him hopeful. Atletico had finally been promoted back to La Liga. He would get his chance. Over the summer, Torres was called up for the U19 European Championship. As a former youth-level sensation, and with the bitter taste of the U17 World Cup still fresh, he was determined to make an impact. He was electric, scoring 3 goals in 3 group stage matches, which, thanks to the tournament's format, sent Spain straight to the final, where they would face Germany. This final match was special. Torres once again rose to the occasion, proving his knack for the big moments. He scored the only goal of the game, a clinical finish that crowned Spain U19 champions of Europe. He carried that scintillating form directly into his first La Liga season, scoring 4 goals in his first 4 matches, setting a precedent for the player he was about to become. He slowed down a bit over the rest of the season, but still finished with a respectable 13 goals, roughly a goal every 2 games. From here on out, it was a constant battle for Torres. He was the beacon of hope for Atletico. With every season, he improved his numbers, fighting harder and harder to restore the club to its former glory. The following season, at just 20 years old, he was immense, finishing only 5 goals behind the great Ronaldo Nazario for the league's top scorer award. His habit of making the spectacular look ordinary had made him the golden boy of Spanish football, earning him his first call-up to the senior national team for an international tournament. The next season was a strange one. It showcased the frustrating inconsistency that would sometimes mark his career. He would go on incredible goal-scoring streaks, looking like the best striker on the planet, only to follow them up with shocking dry spells. To give you a taste, at one point, he scored 10 goals in 11 matches, an incredible run, only to then go 10 matches without finding the net right after. His last 2 seasons at Atletico were defined by a sense of stagnation. With the arrival of the famed manager Carlos Bianchi, there were high hopes that he could replicate the success he'd had in Argentina and lead Atletico to greatness. It just didn't happen. The team slumped, and the poor form affected Torres immensely. The main highlight of that period was his participation in the 2006 World Cup with Spain. He was brilliant in the group stage, scoring 3 goals in 3 matches, though the team would ultimately be knocked out by France in the round of 16. But that Spanish team was inspiring. It was a collection of young, talented, and courageous players who gave every Spaniard hope for a golden future. Torres, as one of the main stars of the show, was inundated with offers from Europe's biggest clubs. He waited 1 more season, driven by his love for Atletico and the dream of leading them back into European competition. But by this point, it was clear to everyone. He was one of the most promising players in the world, and he was being held back. As much as it pained him to leave his boyhood club, he took a leap of faith. He joined Liverpool for £25 million, with Luis Garcia going in the opposite direction. Torres was beyond excited. Everything about Liverpool felt new and thrilling, from his presentation to the fans to the training sessions at Melwood. The climax of this prologue to his Liverpool career came with his first goal in that famous red shirt at a packed Anfield against no other than Chelsea. Latching onto a pass from Steven Gerrard, he burst past Tal Ben Haim with that trademark acceleration and curled a beautiful finish into the far corner. It was a goal that seemed to confirm everything. Torres was in top form at a club that matched his ambition and ready to live out his greatest fantasies. His first year was simply incredible. The start was a little slow, but 10 matches in, he scored his first hat-trick. Soon after, he hit a phenomenal patch of form, scoring 20 goals in 23 consecutive games. Torres was officially on fire, one of the most feared strikers in the world. Unfortunately, that season wouldn't end with a major trophy. Liverpool would fall in extra time to Chelsea in the semi-finals of the Champions League. Once the club season was over, it was time for the 2008 Euros, and a Spanish revolution was about to begin. The team was amazing throughout the tournament. Torres himself wasn't in his most prolific form, with only 1 goal and 1 assist leading up to the final. But in that final against Germany, he once again showed his quality as a big-game player. In the 33rd minute, he chased down a through ball, out-muscled Philipp Lahm, and with Jens Lehmann rushing out, he produced an audacious, delicate chip that looped over the keeper and nestled into the net. It was the only goal of the game. After 44 long years, Spain were champions of Europe, and El Niño had scored the winner. By the end of the year, Torres would be placed 3rd in the Ballon d'Or rankings, behind only the 2 players who would go on to dominate world football for the next 15 years, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. He was at the absolute summit of the game. Torres was living the best moments of his life. But soon after, everything came crashing down. Muscle injuries, one after another, began to plague him. His explosive pace put immense strain on his body, and it started to break down. By January of the next season, he had only scored in 4 matches. Though in classic Torres fashion, 2 of those goals came when Liverpool were 2 goals down against Manchester City, showcasing his fighting spirit. If it weren't for these injuries, perhaps Torres would have broken the record for being the fastest player to reach 50 Premier League goals. As it was, he was only 7 matches short. The second half of the season was much better in terms of goal scoring, but it ended in massive disappointment. Liverpool crashed out in the group stage of the Champions League, and he had to watch as his mighty Spanish national team crumbled in the 2009 Confederations Cup. In the 2009 to 2010 season with Torres, now aged 25, he looked to be back to his best. He started the Premier League season in blistering form with 10 goals in 10 matches. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. But around the new year, his form dipped again. Problems with his hips and groin prevented him from giving his best and eventually forced him into mid-season surgery. Once he was fit again, Torres gave it his all, scoring a remarkable 8 goals in his final 7 matches of the season, helping Liverpool beat Lille and mount a comeback against Benfica in the Europa League. But his body betrayed him again. He had to undergo surgery for a second time that season, this time on his knee, forcing him to watch from the sidelines as Liverpool were agonizingly knocked out of the Europa League by his old club Atletico Madrid. This was a crucial moment. A serious knee surgery can ruin a player's career forever. But Torres was facing a race against time. He needed to not only get back in form, but also be fit enough to take part in the 2010 World Cup. He traveled back to Spain and threw himself into months of grueling rehabilitation. Depending on your perspective, you could say it was all for nothing, or that it was the best decision he ever made. He managed to get called up for the World Cup, a testament to his determination. But he wasn't the same player. He wasn't able to play a full 90 minutes a single time and ended the tournament with 0 goals and 0 assists. Spain, of course, would go on to become world champions, but for Torres, it was a hollow victory. This lack of confidence and creativity at the World Cup might have been the first real sign of his impending downfall. As the new season began, Roy Hodgson took over from Rafa Benitez at Liverpool. Torres, who had a close relationship with Benitez, did not like the change at all. Still, after conversations with the new coach and the new owners, he was convinced to stay under the premise that Liverpool would maintain its ambitions as a world-class club. What he saw was the complete opposite. In their first 8 Premier League matches of the season, they managed just 1 win. Liverpool were in the relegation zone. Torres fought hard, trying to single-handedly drag his team up the table, but by January, while they were playing better, they were still languishing in mid-table. Torres was unhappy. He felt betrayed. He believed that under the new direction, the club was doomed to fail. So this time, when other teams came knocking, he listened. At first, Liverpool rejected all the offers, but Torres was determined to leave. He handed in a transfer request. At the end of a dramatic transfer window, Fernando Torres left for Chelsea for a British record fee of £50 million. But trust me, this wasn't what Torres wanted. He grew up as an Atletico fan, the underdog in a league dominated by Real Madrid and Barcelona. He understood the value of loyalty, of being a one-club man. He said it himself, he felt bitter and sad about the way he left Liverpool. And that is not a good mindset to be in when you are the most expensive player in the country and you need to perform at the highest level. He struggled. The weight of the price tag seemed to crush him. The confidence that had defined him was gone. He looked like a different player. By the end of the season, he had managed just 1 goal for the Blues. The whispers were starting. The rumor was spreading, and it was getting louder. People were making their decision. Fernando Torres was a flop. He didn't want to just back down and accept it. The following year, as Andre Villas-Boas took over from Carlo Ancelotti, Torres was desperate for any opportunity to bounce back. Early on, he managed a brief purple patch, getting 4 goals in 4 matches, and a flicker of hope might have sparked. But it didn't last. What followed was an agonizing goal drought. Torres went 24 matches without scoring. It became a running joke, a meme. It seemed impossible to save his name from the slander that was coming his way. After performing this poorly, the only way to save himself would be to do something truly unforgettable. Something like scoring the most important goal in the club's history. Welcome to the 24th of April, 2012. Villas-Boas was gone. Roberto Di Matteo was in charge as caretaker manager. And somehow, amidst all this chaos, Chelsea were in the second leg of the Champions League semi-finals, playing against Pep Guardiola's legendary Barcelona team at the Camp Nou. They had a 1-goal advantage from the first leg. The task was simple, yet monumental. Don't concede too many. As you might imagine, before the first half had even ended, they were losing 2-0. John Terry had been sent off. Barcelona were unplayable. It seemed over. But then, just before halftime, Ramirez scored a magnificent, audacious chip to pull a goal back. The away goal gave Chelsea hope. The second half was an onslaught. Chelsea defended with their lives. And then it happened. In the 80th minute, Torres came on for Didier Drogba. In the dying seconds of injury time, with Barcelona throwing everyone forward, the ball was cleared upfield. Torres was the only Chelsea player in the Barcelona half. He brought the ball under control, looked up, and saw acres of green grass in front of him. He ran and ran and ran. The entire world held its breath. He approached Victor Valdés, calmly rounded him, and slotted the ball into the empty net. The celebration was pure catharsis. Gary Neville's commentary has become legendary. It was a moment of sheer, unadulterated football drama. If you talk to Chelsea fans now, many will tell you that that single goal was worth the $50 million. I doubt many hold a grudge against Fernando Torres today. Quick tangent, though. I never quite understood why people act as if that goal single-handedly won them the tie. Even if Torres had missed the game, would have ended 2-2 on aggregate with Chelsea progressing on away goals. But football isn't always about logic. It's about moments. And that was his moment. At the end of it all, Chelsea would miraculously beat Bayern Munich on penalties in the final in their own stadium to become European champions for the first time in the club's history. And Fernando Torres, the 50 million flop, had somehow become a club legend. It's a bizarre chapter in his life, full of trophies, but seemingly empty of the individual brilliance and joy he once had. Stories like this, full of twists, contradictions, and redemption, are what make football the beautiful game. If you love these deep dives into the legends of the sport, make sure you subscribe to Legends of Football League so you never miss a chapter of football history. Despite his roller coaster club form, Torres was living through the most prosperous period of his career in terms of trophies, and it was about to get even better. He was called up for the Euro 2012 squad. He wouldn't play a full 90 minutes a single time, being used mainly as a late substitute. Still, he managed to score 2 goals in a group stage match against Ireland. And despite not having a huge impact on their journey there, Torres would come on as a substitute in the final against Italy and score one of Spain's 4 goals as they romped to victory, becoming European champions once more. Torres was fully aware that he hadn't been one of the standout performers of the tournament, so you can imagine his shock when, while celebrating on the pitch with his children after the final, one of his kids told him that the stadium scoreboard had just announced that he was the top scorer of the tournament. Incredibly, no one had scored more than 3 goals in that tournament, and since Torres had played fewer minutes than the other players on 3 goals, he was awarded the Golden Boot. A peculiar and slightly amusing moment, to be sure. Back at club level, despite having won the Champions League, Chelsea would go through a tough time, losing the Club World Cup final and both the UEFA Super Cup and the Community Shield. Still, this would eventually become statistically Fernando's best season at Chelsea, though that's not saying a whole lot. Regardless, after Chelsea were knocked out of the Champions League and dropped into the Europa League, Torres became essential. He scored in the last 16, got 3 goals over 2 legs in the quarter-finals against Rubin Kazan, scored again in the semis against Basel, and finally scored the opening goal in the 2-1 victory over Benfica in the final. That summer he played in the Confederations Cup, where Spain would lose in the final to Brazil. This tournament would inspire another funny Golden Boot story. Once again, Torres would win the award despite only scoring in the group stage. He got 5 goals, and 4 of those came in a 10-0 thrashing of Tahiti. Now consider the fact that Brazil's Fred scored 2 against Italy, 1 against Uruguay, and 2 against Spain in the final, and still got snubbed for the award because he played more minutes. It has to go down as one of the least deserved Golden Boot awards in history. It's actually kind of insane. The following year, Jose Mourinho returned to Chelsea. Their first big test was the European Super Cup against Bayern Munich. Torres opened the scoring with a brilliant finish. But in the very last minute of extra time, Javi Martinez equalized, and Bayern would go on to win on penalties. His season under Mourinho was mediocre at best, and after a disastrous 2014 World Cup with Spain, Torres felt he had no place left in the squad. He took on a new challenge, joining AC Milan on loan. Torres was excited. As he got a tour of the club's incredible museum, he dreamed of making history in a new league, of reigniting his career at another of Europe's grandest clubs. But just a few matches into his time there, it became painfully clear that the coach, Filippo Inzaghi, saw no value in him. The downward spiral continued. Hopeless Torres looked for a light at the end of the tunnel, any escape route. And then it came. A call from home. Atletico Madrid were willing to take him back. And so, with just one single goal for Milan in only 9 appearances, no wonder most people forget he even played there. Torres came back to Madrid. On the day of his presentation back at the Vicente Calderón, the fans showed that their love for their Niño had not been forgotten. 45,000 people turned up just to welcome him home. His first 8 games for the club were an incredible trial by fire, playing Barcelona 3 times and Real Madrid another 3. Talk about tough luck. Still, he would score twice to knock Real Madrid out of the Copa del Rey, proving he still had that big game magic. What a way to say goodbye to his boyhood club. It's moments like these that define a legend. Speaking of legends, who do you want to see us cover next? Drop a name in the comments. I'm always looking for the next great story to tell. His second spell at Atletico was almost like a very long, drawn-out victory lap. Torres was far from his prime, and he often struggled to play a full 90 minutes. Still, in his second year back with Atleti, he would help them reach the Champions League final again against Real Madrid. At the time, Torres was having some pretty decent form, even going on a 5-match goal-scoring streak. But he would be unable to prevent the heartbreak, as Real Madrid once again beat them, this time on penalties. Over his final 2 seasons with Atletico, the biggest highlights were emotional ones. He said goodbye to the iconic Vicente Calderón as Atletico moved into their new home, the Wanda Metropolitano. There was also a worrying moment in a match against Deportivo, where a sickening collision left Torres unconscious on the pitch. The football world held its breath, but thankfully, he walked out of the hospital the next day with nothing more than a bit of neck pain. But above all, the main highlight, the perfect storybook ending, was seeing Fernando Torres get the goodbye he deserved. In the second-to-last match he ever played for the club, Atletico Madrid won the Europa League, beating Marseille 3-0 in the final. It was his first and only major trophy with his beloved club. He may have only been on the pitch for the final minute, but seeing him lift that trophy as captain brought tears to the eyes of every Atleti fan. He decided to call it quits after that, but not before taking on one last challenge, playing for a season in Japan with Sagan Tosu. Poetically, he chose a match against Vissel Kobe, where his former Spain teammates David Villa and Andres Iniesta played as his very last one. Fernando El Niño Torres is an icon regardless of how his career seemed to burn out, regardless of how many times he was called a flop, regardless of him never winning a league title. Back in 2008, if you saw that blonde hair pushed back by a black headband and those red and white total 90 boots coming towards your goal, you just knew trouble was coming. Torres had an eye for the spectacular. He was a great and prolific finisher in his prime, with sublime footwork, blistering speed, and an unteachable instinct for the big moments. He was the kid who conquered Europe, then the world lost his way, and then found his way home again. A true legend of the beautiful game. And that's where this incredible football story concludes. What a journey, right? I'm so eager to hear your thoughts. What moment from Torres's career stood out to you the most? Was it the Euro 2008 winner, the goal at the Camp Nou, or his emotional return to Atletico? Please share all your opinions, your favorite memories, and any questions you have in the comments below. I truly love reading them and building this amazing football community with all of you. Thanks for watching.